ability classes. And what does that mean? What is mixed ability classes? It means mixed ability in terms of language ability and level. So if you have a class where you have someone who has stronger language skills and you have another student who has weaker language skills, in an ideal world, we work for an organization that placement tests students and the levels are very distinguished and everybody's grouped really well. But there are contexts that we can find ourselves in where we do have a class with wide varieties of levels. So you may have someone who's a beginner and then somebody who's more intermediate, and this can be a struggle to deal with. So let's talk about some different contexts that we could find ourselves in. So one is the CELTA. So if any of you have done a CELTA, you may have had this experience, because the CELTA, by the nature of the CELTA, is we have two groups, a lower level, like a pre-intermediate level, and then an upper intermediate level that we use for our courses. And so what happens is that you can have this wide variety of levels within those. And sometimes when we need students, we allow a little bit of a lower level and a higher level class. And so if you've done a CELTA and you've experienced that, your trainers have given you some advice about how to deal with that, maybe grouping a higher level student with a lower level student, or changing the task so that maybe there's an extra task for fast finishers. So if you've had that experience, you have gotten those suggestions. Another context might be refugee classes. So you might have a group of refugees, and maybe just because of the logistics or for financial reasons, they're putting everybody into one class. Another context might be community college ESL classes, and for similar reasons, that they may not have enough students for every level. You know, if you think about all the levels from elementary, pre-intermediate, we can use the CFER levels as well and talk about A1, A2. They may not just have enough students to have those diversity of levels, and so they group people together, and this can be a challenge for teachers. And then there's the context of the same major. So you can find this situation in universities. I had an experience working in Korea where we had universities who group students by major. So you have all of the engineering students, they take an English class together. All the PE students, they take an English class together. And so they're not grouped in terms of level, but by major. So that means that you could have stronger students and weaker students in the same class. And that's a logistical issue that is just easier for them in their timetabling and figuring out their rooms and what's available. So it's a little bit of kind of laziness on their part, but you know, just logistically, it's easier for them to do that. And I have this term here, resource rich. So it's context like in South Korea, where you may have all these students grouped by major, but you also have lots of resources. You have a library, you have reference material, you have course books, you have all of that kind of thing at your disposal. And then we can also have the same kind of situation for everybody's in the same major, but the context is resource poor. And this could be maybe in countries that don't have a lot of resources. So I did a project recently in Cameroon, working at a university, and they just didn't have, they had a library, but it was more geared towards the major subjects, not for English as a foreign language. And it was a real time-consuming challenge for me to get the resources that I needed for these classes. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today, is in terms of mixed ability. I think the challenge is, how do we gather resources and materials that are going to be beneficial for these mixed ability classes? So I've talked a little bit about the context here and a little bit about my experience in some of these. I'd like to involve you guys. If you could just open up your chat box and put in, if you're in one of these contexts, if you find yourself in one of these contexts of mixed ability, or if there's something different that I've left out, if you're in a context where you are teaching students and you have mixed levels in your class. Okay, great. So Grace says, I'm at a community college. Yeah. And how is that, Grace? Is that, you know, is it challenging? Do you find it challenging to be in that situation? Natalia just finished her CELTA on Friday. Congratulations. All right, we have some people in private schools with mixed ability, summer school. Yeah, refugee, lots of interesting contexts here. Yeah, refugee classes, and you're saying you're super motivated. Yeah, there's some of the most interesting classes, aren't they? All right, so many different. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for contributing there. That's fantastic. So not only is there the issue of having mixed ability students in your class, there is some other aspects related to those contexts that we just talked about that are also things that we have to consider. So for example, if you have classes with lower level and higher level students together, you can have the problem of lack of confidence on the side of the lower level students, because there they are in the same room with these more proficient people. And so a lot of students that I've talked to in this position say, I just feel like I'm not improving. I'm reticent to speak. I feel a little bit embarrassed. So the second thing that we can think about is that the background might be different. So for example, in the situation where I was in Cameroon, the learners were used to very teacher-centered instruction style in that context. And it may be that the lessons are very oriented to test preparation, and it may not be focusing on skills. And so that might be another issue related to context that is a difficulty with these mixed ability classes. All right. And then finally, what I mentioned before, the lack of suitable materials. So if you find yourself in that situation, it's really challenging, right? And this is what I want to turn to next. When I talk about the materials, it's searching for them. I've spent a lot of time searching through for materials, searching the internet, looking at course books, and related to these contexts, kind of thinking about materials and how to deal with mixed ability. I've come up with a few best practices for this to consider while we're looking through materials and syllabus design. So one is to personalize and generalize. And I think all teachers, this is elementary for all teachers, that we always try to personalize our lessons to the students, but also this idea of generalizing, so that you think, okay, what do like most human beings like to talk about? And you know, they will work for almost any context you do. And then also adding some elements for your class and your students. The second one is also pretty obvious: provide skills and systems practice. So skills, listening, reading, writing, and systems, grammar, vocabulary. That seems obvious, but when you're in these contexts with the issue of maybe preparing for a test, or a very teacher-centered situation, or lack of resources, you may find that you struggle to find listenings that are appropriate for mixed ability, that can cater to lower level and higher levels at the same time. The other thing that through practice and experience that I found is that it's good to vary simple and complex grammatical structures in the same task. So there's always going to be the element of the lower level students having some confusion at times, and the higher level students having some boredom at times, but trying to think about offering these different levels so that Even lower level students may have seen some of these more complex grammatical structures in that kind of test preparation context. It's a matter of getting them to produce it. So I'll be showing you an example of this later on. And then we talked about before, varying the groupings, sometimes having all the strong ones together, all the weak ones together, sometimes having strong students helping weak students. And more importantly, I think varying the task challenge. So having one task, but different levels of tasks so that lower level students can do something that's easier and higher level students can do more, but everybody doing the same task. And I'll show you an example of that. And then finally, having frequent low stakes formative assessments so that at each lesson or each unit, you have an assessment and to vary speaking, listening, grammar, vocabulary with points, low level points. So thinking about motivation, a lot of students, if they're low confidence or feeling bad about their English, they are still motivated by grades and points. And if they're collecting these points throughout, they can actually do very well in the lesson. And motivation can, or success can lead to motivation. We always used to think about that your motivated students are successful, but it's actually that successful students are motivated. And so if they get these points and can see that they're getting a good grade throughout, rather than leaving the assessment till the end. So after much searching through course books and resources and the whole internet, I came across a few resources that I will share with you here that really have worked for me. And you may be familiar with these already, but the first one is biography.com. And this is a really good source for once you find out which famous people your students are interested in, then you can use that as your content, right? And that's engaging and it personalizes it to their interests. It's a good reading, and you can also work with grammatical and vocabulary structures. And then we have, in the middle, we have Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab. If anyone's used this before, it's a really useful site because it does everything for you. So it has everything pre-prepared, and it's a good listening site. And I think it works really well for both lower levels and mixed ability. And I'll be showing you an example of that today. LO is similar. It has different stuff, but I like to use it for listening. And then the one on the bottom, ELT base, I won't be showing you anything from that today, but I really like it because the grammar activities are often contextualized. If you are here and you've done a CELTA course with me, something that really bothers me about course books is decontextualized controlled practice, where you have just random sentences like John went to the store, he played basketball, you know, just things that are unconnected. So if we can personalize or add context, I think that really helps. Okay, so these are the resources that some of them we'll look at today, and I found really useful. I'll also be providing a link to all of these to you later on. And then while I'm gathering resources, I'm thinking about my syllabus, and I come up with a kind of simple syllabus that's going to work for mixed ability. So you can see here, it's pretty basic, and it looks a lot like maybe elementary or pre-intermediate course book syllabus, but there is more of a range here. So if you see the topic, introduce yourself, abilities, this is a way of kind of diagnostic. So you see a lot of different tenses here. Present, simple present for regular routines, past tense. So I can do diagnostic and see where they are in terms of these. And then it also provides a level of challenge for higher level students, and it's not so boring for them. You can see a variety of systems and skills, so grammar, listening, reading, and writing. And there's the assessment. So I mentioned that formative assessment throughout, giving a few points as you go along, and motivating students to do the work of each unit, knowing that they will be assessed every single lesson or every single unit. So you can see, and there's a variety of assessments, so writing, listening, and so on. And so with the diagnostic, I find out things about them, and then I can incorporate that into the tasks later on. For example, I found out that the students like Justin Bieber and they like Brad Pitt. And so then later I was able to get those from the biography.com and use that as the content, and they loved it. Oh, Brad Pitt, I want Brad Pitt. That's great. So this is just an example of a basic syllabus using the materials that I showed you before and collecting them. All right, so related to those materials, I've found some activities that work. After trying out lots of different things with mixed ability, these are some activities, and a lot of them are pretty old school type of activities, but that's good in a sense. If you find yourself in a low tech context, or one of these contexts that has not very many resources for you, these will work for you. All right, so we have the first one is the jumbled sentences. I'm sure you've seen this before. And getting back to my pet peeve of the course books offering kind of random contexts, we'll see here that these generalize and personalize. So let's do this together. Everybody open up the chat box. And if you could, for number one, put the sentence in order. Go ahead. Excellent. Excellent job. Okay, number two. Go ahead and do number two. Yeah, perfect, perfect. And how about number three? Go ahead, and a couple people put in number three. Everybody's got number two. Okay, perfect. So you've got, so number three, you notice is a little bit different. Why does she go to Yaoundé every weekend? So Yaoundé is a city in Cameroon. So this one is personalized. So the first two are generalized, right? Pretty simple. We could use this with any group. The third one is personalized. And this is something that I just learned about these learners, that what do they do on the weekends? You know, not the same things that we necessarily do in California or London, or, you know, it's a different kind of culture and society. So just thinking, okay, what do they do on the weekends? So sometimes they travel to other cities to visit relatives. So I add that in as a personalized part of it to engage and make it more relevant to their context. So that's an example of the jumbled sentences. Another old school one is dictation. And this will work well with when you're with those contexts where the students are used to more teacher-centered, kind of more traditional context. I might be trying to get them to work in pairs and do communicative activity, and then they're not really enthusiastic about that. And then I say, all right, paper, pen out, I'm gonna do dictation, you listen. They're like, ah, great. Finally, something we understand that makes sense to us. This is also good when you have not that resource poor context. You can, this is so easy, you know, you just think of any little story related to the grammatical structure you're teaching and personalize it to your context. If you want to bring this into the modern age, then you can do this through WhatsApp. So what I like to do is create a WhatsApp group with the students. I send them an audio, and they use that as a dictation. And to vary the challenge here, for lower level students, you can set some questions, like a gist question or a detailed question to focus them. For higher level students, you could ask them to do the dictation, to write everything out. And it's interesting, there was a study done recently where they showed that for even advanced learners have a hard time listening and catching every single word, and they have to listen again and again and again. So that's a good level of challenge for those higher levels. And they can do that at home and listen as many times as they want. This is an example of where you vary simple and more complex grammatical structures. So you can see that on the left, what can you do? Pictures, matching the pictures to sentences. This is going to be easier for the lower levels. They'll build confidence with them. They can do this. And then on the right, we have a text. Some of this is about me. I'm good at cooking, but I'm not as good as my mother. I don't like to drive, it's true. So I kind of personalize this to myself and the students. The last one is about skiing. I've never gone skiing. In fact, I have gone skiing, but when I was doing this with Cameroonian learners, none of them have gone skiing. So I wanted to give them that model so that they could use that as the negative. So what do you do with mixed ability with this? The higher level ones can write their own paragraph below about their interests. What do they like? What are they good at, not good at? The lower levels can write less and maybe shorter sentences. And then the real low levels, they could just copy this. And there is some evidence that copying is a good thing to do. And so you can just vary the task to meet the learner's needs. This is an example from biography.com. So I have the text about Neymar. Football is always a good thing to do internationally. Everybody knows about football, knows football stars. And then I added the comprehension questions at the bottom, and you can use this with simple past and vocabulary related to family members. So you can integrate language systems and skills here with this. So this website offers you everything. So you have the audio and you have the questions. I'm just going to play a little bit. Let's answer the first question. What time does the man get up?
So, what's your usual day like? You always seem so busy.
Well, I usually get up around 5 a.m. and work on the computer until 6.
What time does he get up? You can put it in the chat. Yes, very well done. So this is a good activity if you're teaching online. So you can have the students answering the questions. It's done for you as they're listening to the audio. And then you can also, if that's too hard for your students, then you can go over to the listening script. So we have the whole script here. So they could read and listen at the same time. And then that makes it easier in terms of that catering for that mixed ability of the lower level learners. Okay, so that's that website. And just wanted to go back to PowerPoint and show you related to that. So this is the transcript from the listening, and I've made this into a task. So the task is make 3 to 5 changes to the dialogue and then perform for the class. So with the 3 to 5, lower level students can make 3 changes. Higher level students can make 5 changes. The changes can be quite simple, like changing 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., changing little things here. And then they perform the dialogue for the class. It's quite scaffolded, it's quite structured, but they can make changes to it. Also gets them reading it more intensely and really checking their comprehension of this as a reading. And then they make their changes to it. They perform their dialogue. I found that this works really successfully in class. And then finally, just talking about providing frequent low stakes formative assessment. So taking your learning objectives, creating your little assessments, and then you can have a really simple rubric, which you can see on the right. And especially if you have large groups of students, and you have this rubric, you can just quickly go through each speaking task and mark it quickly, not giving a whole lot of feedback, but again, giving points so that it motivates the students to do the work before this assessment. So I have links here, but I'm going to share this in the chat as a Google Doc. And I believe my time is up. So Lizzie, if you want to take over.